And start, I think. Um, so welcome everybody. So this is I'm excited. This is our January meeting. New year, happy new year, everybody. We are going to do this meeting a little bit differently. We're going to have our updates from our superintendent and our principal as normal. But then we are going to head into our 3 workshops. And just quickly, we were going to do breakout rooms and do 15-minute workshops so that everybody could go to all of them. But then Anne brilliantly realized everybody's going to go to them all. So why are we breaking out? So we're not going to break out. We're just going to do them. We will do the course selection workshop last so that if we have any senior parents, they can drop off at that point. So with that, Roy, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Let's hope that 2022 is a little bit better than 2021 when it comes to the COVID front. I'm not so sure we'll ever get used to seeing the small squares with everybody, but we'll continue to do the best we can. But I know tonight that I was asked to talk a little bit about the COVID and numbers and protocols and things like that, because there's a lot of confusion, I suppose, and information that people want to hear, and you read about certain things. So I'd like to really talk mostly about that as part of my discussion, and hopefully answer any questions that people have to the best of our abilities. But as you know, our goal since this whole thing started was to try to keep schools as open as we can for in-person learning for as long as we can, as safely as we can. I think we are continuing to do that. I also think it's going to get better and better. I don't think it's going to get worse at this point. I do think it's going to get better, and our ability to manage that is going to get better. When it comes to COVID, I think we are probably beyond the point where we can say we're preventing things from happening, and now we're at the point where we're managing it to the best of our ability, because it seems that despite vaccinations and boosters and everything else, people are still getting infected with the virus, albeit milder symptoms. But I don't know that we can ever avoid that. So with that, let me share some quick numbers from the high school of what we have in terms of positive cases since we started school this school year, and then as well as staff members. And I'll try to get into some of the newer protocols that have just come out. So, and Rachel is my backup here, so in case I get anything wrong, she's going to chime in and help me out, because she's our COVID coordinator and certainly has been keeping busy nights, weekends, and everything else, trying to manage all this contact tracing and such that we have to do. But in terms of our students, prior to January 3rd, we had 55 high school students who tested positive that we're aware of, that we know of. And since the last week occurred, we had an additional 23 high school students just in the last week. So a total of 78 high school students have tested positive. On the staff side, prior to January 3rd, at the high school, we had 18 staff members who tested positive. And then in the last week, 2 additional ones. So a total of 20 high school staff members tested positive for COVID. And while the student side is difficult enough trying to coordinate lessons and who's streaming in and all that, and I know Anne's going to talk about midterms and the impact of that and all that goes and what adjustments we can make because of that. On the staffing side, just, in addition to the high school staff, overall, we've had, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 65 staff members who have tested positive since the start of the year. The challenging part for us is class coverages. And so while I don't think that unless the governor somehow shuts down schools, which I don't think will happen, the only other reason we would attempt to go to remote learning is if we don't have enough staff in the school itself to cover our kids safely. We try to, and staff members have been just tremendous at helping each other out, covering classes when needed. I know Anne's had to cancel a few classes here and there when we had people who couldn't get to work or on top of COVID. So, it does concern us at times, just the number of staff members and how we can supervise everybody and cover classes. But so far, we are tending to manage that. I know there's confusion between what the CDC puts out and then how our state evaluates that, because we do get memos from the State Department of Health, and then we get memos from the Westchester County Department of Health. So we're getting 3 bits of information from 3 different groups, and oftentimes it does not match up. The CDC generally comes out with something, the State Department of Health evaluates that, reviews it, and gives the state a set of protocols, but then they have a caveat saying you can't do these things unless the county agrees. So then we have to get County Department of Health approval for those things. One of the things that they've actually been trying to work to eliminate is contact tracing, believe it or not. It's just become so unmanageable for everybody. It takes, and certainly for schools, it takes resources away from us that we have to contact trace. But I just read today, as part of the state guidelines that came out, they are recommending that counties eliminate contact tracing. That doesn't mean schools can yet, but it means that county departments of health can, because they just can't keep up with it. One of the new things that just came out this afternoon was the new quarantining guidelines. And so we just learned late this afternoon that the new quarantine will be 5 days as opposed to 10, assuming that children are and staff are asymptomatic. And so we're still looking at the memo and trying to decipher exactly what it means. But the bottom line is that it appears that if a student tests positive and does not show any symptoms, which we've had, they can stay out 5 days and be back. Similarly, if someone does test positive, has symptoms, they only have to be out 5 days from the time of the symptoms. So that does help quite a bit. It'll get kids back in school earlier. And we think it's a step in the right direction to keep kids in school. Once we get that all buttoned up, we will send a memo out to the community to outline all of that information so you can see the impact of that. Other than that, I do want to let you know that fortunately, we have had more people sign up to take advantage of the PCR testing that we do every week. I think in the past week, we had over 300 people get tested, which is pretty good. We started off, if you remember, in the hundreds, like 150 or so. So we've more than doubled the amount of people who are getting tested. We'd love for that number to get up higher because it is a free service we are able to provide through the county, and it gives us some really good information. I think last week our infection rate was hovering around about 8% from the testing, which is significantly below peers that I know of who are also doing testing. Maybe now with the quarantining being 5 days, people will be more open to having a test, because I know some of the fear is that if somebody tests positive, even if they're asymptomatic, they're going to miss 10 days of school. So now with that being lowered, I hope that we'll get more people who are interested in signing up for the testing. So please keep that in mind. We'll send something out with some additional information, protocols, update, all of that stuff as we move forward. The mask mandate is still in place in schools for New York. I don't see that changing anytime soon, although I will tell you it's on the agenda for people to look at based on certain metrics. There are other states that are considering, Connecticut, I think, is considering doing away with the mask mandate if the inside population has a vaccination rate of 80% or something like that. And I know New York is looking into that, but we have not had any information right now. It is mask mandate for everybody. And we really emphasize that with our kids. I think it's an important part of our mitigation procedures. And I don't see that for us anyway, going away anytime soon. Other than that, we still do the work of school outside of COVID. I think we have a lot of pretty interesting initiatives going on this year that'll continue. We're proud of the work that we're doing. And I really want to thank the community for the partnership that we have with you. It really helps us out quite a bit when we know we have the community supporting us and who want the same things that we do for our kids. And that's really to stay in school and try to have as much normalcy as we can. One of the caveats I want to say about that quarantining, however, excuse me one second, is that if the 5-day quarantine at the moment only refers to being back in school for classes. It does not include currently co-curricular after-school activities. That's still 10-day, but they're sorting through that. And I know it gets confusing, but we'll try to share that information as clearly as we possibly can. Quick question I see in the chat. Do you know what their vaccination rate is among students? We currently do not know that information, although Rachel and I were discussing today, we do want to send out a survey. We can't mandate people tell us that information due to HIPAA laws. However, we are going to send out a Google survey asking if people would be willing to share whether their child is vaccinated or not. And as soon as we get that, at least we'll have better information. We know that we have a lot of kids vaccinated because when we do the contact tracing, that's part of the contact tracing protocol. And at that point, we have to know if they are or not, so they can either stay in school or have to be quarantined. So if somebody's vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine, which is one of the benefits of someone being vaccinated. So we do know that, and we are tracking that, but as a full population, we don't know currently, though I would suspect it's fairly high. Amongst the staff, I think we're above 90% at this point of staff who are vaccinated. With that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you might have or field any comments if you wish.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everybody.
All right, we'll move on to Anne.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm not going to spend too much time because we have a number of people here, including students, to share some resources with all of you. But I did want to spend a bit of time talking about midterms being canceled and the reasoning behind that and the plans for the final 2 weeks of the quarter. So essentially, we had midterm scheduled the last week in January, the 4 days, Tuesday through Friday of that week. And that was a time that the state had regents exams scheduled because there are January regents that are given. And we actually give the English regents in January to all of our juniors, and we give the algebra regents to the Algebra 1 CC students who are in that semester algebra course. What happened is, I think it was December, mid-December, the state canceled the January regents. And unlike last year where there was some flexibility around instructional time, we do have a state requirement as a school to provide a certain number of instructional hours per year and a certain number of instructional days. I fill out a nice big Excel spreadsheet that we submit to the state that literally counts the number of hours every day students are in class, minus passing time, lunchtime, all of those things. When there are regents exams scheduled, the state basically says on those days you can count it as a day, a full day of school, even though everyone's not in the building and they're not attending classes. Because we realize when regents are given, not everyone's going to be there. This year, when the state canceled the regents, they said you can't do that. You cannot have exams those days and count those days. So to maybe put that more simply, we'd have to subtract 4 days off of the school year of instructional days and go to school for 4 days during a break to make them up. Nobody wants to do that. And so it became very obvious that we needed to cancel midterms. I will also say that the week and a half before December break and all of the time since, we have had many students out for 10 days. Hopefully now it gets reduced. We've had faculty out. There's been a lot of, change day to day. Who's in, who's out? How are things covered? And so we welcomed the fact that we could cancel midterms because it gives us 4 extra days in the quarter for all these students to get caught up, take anything they missed, finish things up. Now, and teachers for that matter, some of whom have been out for a full week or a week and a half. I do know there are some concerns expressed by students or parents that, oh my gosh, a teacher's going to just give a midterm in class. That is not going to happen. Teachers have been told you cannot, not only can you not give a midterm or a final, you cannot give a cumulative exam, because I don't want someone sort of pretending like it's not a midterm, but really it is. Like students will tell you that happens. So the only kind of assessment that can be given in those last 2 weeks is a unit test. Let's say you just finished a unit. Like one of my bio teachers said, oh, then I'll give an evolution test. I never give a test on that because usually I put it on the midterm. I'm just going to give a test on evolution. We are creating a testing schedule for those last 2 weeks, which will assign departments days they can give a test on. And the maximum number of departments per day will be 2, so that students shouldn't have more than 2 tests a day. That's going to go out to faculty tomorrow, so there may be some adjustments around when tests will happen for students. I will also share it with students and parents tomorrow. So that's another way we're trying to make sure that students aren't loaded up with tests. One more thing I want to mention, because there are so many students who have missed. Honestly, we also have a whole set of students who had the flu. And we have some students who had the flu and then they had COVID and they missed like 3 weeks of school. If a student missed a lot of school and is really behind, I've heard from a couple parents, don't hesitate to reach out to me or the guidance counselor. We do have the ability in some of those unique cases to give a student an incomplete and give them a little more time to finish things. So I don't want people being stressed if they've been out for a while and they come back and they have to make up a bunch of tests or hand a bunch of things in. So I'm just trying to reassure everyone that we realize this is a crazy time. And I'll just give you some context. When we were planning this meeting in November, we were planning for it to be in person in the building. And we were going to do workshops in different spaces that parents haven't seen yet. That is how much has changed from November to today, even in our own imagination of what is possible. So we're continuing to be flexible. We'll make it work. No one is out to punish a kid for having COVID and being out. Please don't hesitate to talk to the teacher, to the counselor, to Mr. Lassane, to me. We're here to help and get kids caught up so they're not stressed out, and finish off the quarter on a good note. And hopefully things will come down and we'll feel like things are back to normal. And maybe we could even have the February council meeting in the building, but maybe not February, maybe March is more reasonable. But I am confident we're going to get there. We're going to get to an in-person high school council meeting this year so that people can see the cool new spaces in the high school. So that's the goal. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do want to hand it over to Erin Kind to start some of the sharing from students and some of our faculty and counselors.
And can I just have one more minute? I apologize.
Yes, of course.
One thing I forgot to mention, everybody, and I do apologize, and that has to do with the emergency closing days. You know, as you know, Friday we had a snow day, traditional snow day. And in the memo, we did mention that in the future, we could look to potentially do remote learning day as opposed to a full closing day. I just want to clarify the reasons for that, if it wasn't clear. So in the calendar this year, we have 4 emergency closing days built into the calendar. We've already used 2 of those, one right before the holiday break and one on Friday, which means we have 2 left to last us the next couple of months of winter. And our intent would be to, if necessary, use those first as in that way. But rather than pull days from a vacation period to make up, as Ann was saying, the days required by the state, we would use a remote learning day because it still counts as a day of school. And we think that's a better option if necessary than to close school completely and have to make up the day during a break. So I just want to make sure everybody understood the reasons behind that. Thank you.
And just to answer Susan's question, those 300 PCR are across the district, not just in the high school. If you signed your child up to do the PCR in the high school, you need to tell them to come to the high school office to get their little PCR envelope. So we don't have homeroom, we don't have advisory, we're not delivering them. High school students need to come in. It is so easy. You can't even find a PCR right now. In this case, you take it home on Tuesday. It's based on saliva, and then you literally drop it off in a box in the high school office. So if you haven't signed up, I would recommend doing so. I'm going to hand it over to Aaron.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be here tonight. Happy New Year. It's nice to see so many familiar names and faces. It's also nice to start talking about something besides COVID. We have a pretty robust lineup tonight, and so I'll just sort of give a brief overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to our students that have joined us. So I think in the last meeting, I mentioned we shared with the freshman transition group, which is all the ninth graders, a study skills website resource that some upperclassmen created. And so I've recruited a few of them to join us tonight to share with you sort of what we did with the ninth graders, and also maybe some ways in which you can help your child navigate through that resource. Most recently, going back to December, right before break, we shared it with the 10th graders in their English class. And then again today, actually, because one of those sessions was postponed, we captured the other half of the 10th grade. Following that, Dr. Viviano is going to share with you some strategies for helping your child manage distress tolerance. We sort of had Dr. Viviano, our school psychologist, and some psychology interns also push into the 10th grade English classes in the past week, and dating back to December, to share with the 10th graders some strategies relating to that. The counselors are going to talk about some programs for the remainder of the year. I think at the last council meeting, there was a few requests to see what's on the horizon for the school year. And so we've kind of broken things down by grade level. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about course selection for all grades. And with that, I'm about to turn it over to Eliza, but I do want to say, just kind of openly and publicly, there are a few students and a faculty member that couldn't be here tonight that helped make this resource that you're about to see. So I want to give a shout out to Melissa Diaguardi, Savannah Delicoli, Remy Mellenhoff, and Isabella Scagnelli, who couldn't join us, but did contribute in making this amazing, amazing resource. And with that, I'm going to let Eliza share it with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eliza, and I'm a senior here. So this year, like a lot of seniors, I was a freshman transition leader, and we shared this site with the freshmen. And before I share my screen and show you, I'm just going to fill you guys in on what we did with the freshmen. So basically, the freshman transition program, we help seniors help freshmen transition from middle school to high school, both academically and socially. And in November, we just talked about the differences and like how they were getting their footing. And I think we discovered from a lot of them that it was very difficult to start high school. I think the big difference between like 8th grade and 9th grade is less in content. Like, I don't think your classes necessarily get that much harder. However, like it's very different, like learning to be organized by yourself. In Bronxville, you get a lot of responsibility in high school. Like you have your free periods, it's a block schedule, but with that independence is also a lot of new responsibility. So with this site, we tried to not only talk about like how to study for specific classes, but also how to manage your time well. All of my freshmen seem to kind of be struggling with the block schedule a little bit. Basically, that means that we have classes every other day, and it has pros and cons. It's very, very nice that you don't have to do homework for the same class every single day, but it's also difficult. I know I personally have all of my work heavy classes on even days. So like learning to manage my time and do some of my work the day it is assigned. And I think if you have a 9th grader, like as a parent, I think just really encouraging them to do their homework like the day it is assigned is super helpful because it's really tempting to push it all to the last minute. And then I also went into a few, and a bunch of other seniors did, into the sophomore English classes. And I think they kind of had the time management stuff down. But for them, they had a lot of questions about like how to study for specific classes and the differences. I think they've had it rough because they didn't really, their 9th grade year was weird with COVID. Obviously, they were on Zoom half the time. And I think they didn't have a ton of huge tests. It was a lot of projects and group work. So like learning how to study really well. And so the site is kind of focused on, there's like both areas. And I will share my screen right now. Here we go. So this is the site. Oh, hopefully I can make it bigger. And basically you can see all the sections. I think tonight we're mostly going to be talking about the midterm planning section. We did make this before midterms were canceled, but it's still very relevant. It's still about like studying for specific classes, because I keep saying that, but it is, I think this is what we discovered with the sophomores. Like, it's important to know how to study for a math test versus how to study for a history test, because it's very different and those skills are important to develop. Before I turn it over to Clarissa to talk about her section, I am just going to point out at the bottom, a lot of the sections, we just have reflection questions. And we went through all these with the freshmen, like and this is just specific to like organizational tools like Google Drive, like how are you naming your documents? If your child is struggling with any area, I think it is a good idea to just go through and have them reflect, because like these areas kind of cover all the bases, and you have to figure out the problem before you can solve anything. So I'm gonna stop talking now because I've been rambling, but here is Clarissa.
Okay, so I think that actually Finn is doing the first 2 ones.
Yeah, I got the top 2.
We can go to him first.
Hey everybody, my name is Finn Sands and I'm a junior at Bronxville. So our goal here, well, to start, we're talking about test taking strategies and study tools. And as a group during our meetings, one of the things we focused on is like putting ourselves in the shoes of freshmen. And I think something we all took away, as you can see right there, it says study like you're taking the test. So whenever you're studying for a test and you're trying to get the hang of it, being in the right environment is key. Practicing questions that could be on the test is also key. And notes are also key. So Eliza, if you want to scroll down a little bit. So if you take a look, you could see one of our classmates, you could see their English notes right there, for example. The way they're constructed is quite organized and would be perfect to reference to, because the way it's formatted is perfect. So if you want to click that little caret, basically we put ourselves in the shoes of the freshmen and basically said, okay, if we were studying for an English test, these are the best ways to study for an essay or a test. Up above was the history section. A reference like Khan Academy is perfect. And we did it for the other subjects too, besides language, because there's so many different levels and so many different teachers, it's just too hard to keep track of. And then when looking at study tips, if you want to scroll down a little bit, we have the study checklist. So you're putting all of this time into studying. You might as well make sure you've done everything you can. Did you eat a good breakfast, a good lunch? Did you get enough sleep? Did you go to extra help in X block and get some help from the teachers to get yourself on that next level? And then if you want to take a look at the tips for during tests, personally, like if you were to ask me, I think studying versus the test is completely different. You could study for 4 hours, but once you sit down and take the test, you could become shaky or jumpy or nervous and forget half the stuff you studied for. And keeping calm is basically a necessity here. So this list right here is just a great way to keep yourself intact, to keep your focus on. Maybe take a sip of water, wear a watch, and just don't panic and keep your cool. So now if you want to take a look at the next slide, yeah. Okay, so it's clear all of us have different stresses in our life And as students, I think people get really anxious around tests and test taking, and everyone has a different way to cope with this. And that's kind of the idea of this part of the website. The Bronxville School has done a great job promoting meditation in the last couple of years, creating clubs and promoting all these different resources. So if you see you have calm.com and Smiling Mind, just great ways to calm yourself down before tests. Another important thing is coloring. As crazy as this sounds, I know we're high schoolers, but a lot of people love to color. It's just a great way to take your mind off things and just keep yourself intact and stay calm. And then lastly, the last thing we'll focus on is music. If you want to scroll down a little bit, yeah. In school, it seems like you'll look in the study commons or maybe the cafeteria, you'll always see somebody with their AirPods in. So we created a bunch of different Spotify playlists, music playlists on Apple, YouTube as well, that basically will help you study. They're not like crazy rap songs, they're just clean songs that will help you stay calm and be productive when you're studying. And then the last thing I'll talk about is white noise. So if you're studying at home, maybe downstairs, you'll hear a vacuum cleaner or you'll hear some siblings fighting. And a great way to counter this is just to put some headphones in, listen to the sound of rain or some ocean waves, and it will help you lock in and study for whatever you're studying. So now I'm going to hand it over to Clarissa for her portion.
Yeah, okay, so hi everyone, I'm Clarissa. I'm a junior at Bronxville. Like Eliza said, even though we don't have midterms this year, these resources can be really helpful for any major or minor exam. I'm going to briefly go over what's in these 2 pages. So I'm going to start with scheduling and study plans. All right, so on this page, we're just talking about different ways to organize your time, primarily for studying. We also have a few online resources. So yeah, if you scroll down, you can see that's Notion and Google Sheets. So for example, I personally use Google Sheets to manage my schedule pretty much every week. So I made a blank template that students can use and fill in their own schedule and assignments and if they have appointments or something. So basically this page provides resources for organizing time, and it also provides academic and mental tips, which you can see at the top. So like you can see there, it says link forced copy, and you can make your own copy of that template. Okay, and the next page is digital resources. Okay, so this page is basically a compiled list of all the links that are in the midterm planning section. So if you're looking for a link and you don't want to go through the whole website, you can probably find it here. Like for example, that Google Sheet template is linked right on the top. So for example, so yeah, okay. So this link at the top is a forced copy of that schedule, which means it'll make a blank copy so you can put in your own customizable schedule. And there's also a link to the Bronxville District Student Tutoring System, which is, I don't know if it's been added yet, but it's really important to go over that. You can read more about that under the drop-in academic support, which is on the homepage. So basically the point of this page is just any links you find on the website are going to be hyperlinked here, so then they're easily accessible. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the midterm planning section.
Awesome. I know, Amelia, I saw you out there. Did you want to, I don't know if you can turn your mic on and off, but if you wanted to mention anything about whichever portion of the site that you contributed to?
Oh, absolutely. Hi, I'm Amelia. I'm a junior. So I made the Notion online template. If you want to click on that. Notion is basically a digital platform that allows you to create pretty much any kind of organizational tool you would want. But throughout the past couple of years I've been in high school, I've used it as a tool to kind of organize all of my academic tasks. So I made this one for freshmen. It's pretty user-friendly, obviously customizable. Would you be able to click on it, Mr. Kind? Oh, if it asks you to log in, like it's fine, you don't have to show it. But it basically just gives them space to plan out their week. I know that there's a section to create a table for just like all of the assignments they could have in a really concise, organized way. There are different folders for each of their classes. So if they were to want to, if they take notes on their computer, I know that can get really disorganized really quickly. So if they want to compile it into this resource, they can. There's also a space for extracurriculars. It's really hard to lose track of your extracurriculars when you have all of these academic responsibilities as well. But at the bottom of the template, I also provided a space for them just to plan out when they have club meetings, when they have tasks for internships or volunteer opportunities, etc. So I hope that you guys get time to check this out and maybe use it. Thank you.
Awesome. That was fantastic. Thank the four of you, Eliza, Amelia, Clarissa, and Finn. Thank you all so much for doing that. I do want to say that even in them presenting that, you could see there's kind of different levels in which you could really dig into this. And to Eliza's point, just in our discussion about this site, I think for parents, you obviously know your children best, and potentially sitting down with them and kind of going through a layer of that site, if that's the layer in which they seem to have the most struggle the most with, maybe like their Google Drive is disorganized or managing their time could be better. And there's like steps and tools and apps and etc. to help you just work with them, to get them in a better spot. Okay, with that, Dr. Viviano, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Sure, let me just share my screen very
And
quickly.
I'm just going to tell the students that was amazing and you guys don't have to stay because you probably have to go get some work done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, I think you need to make me a host again because I popped out and back in for me to share my screen.
Oh,
Thanks.
I think you got it now.
Just got it.
So it was great to sort of dovetail and push into the classes here, because I thought these sets of skills that we were talking about, that the seniors already put together in this fabulous website, really matches what we are talking about almost on the other side in terms of mental health and how to really manage our emotions and what that means in terms of, being productive when it comes to school. So I think some of you might be familiar already with this term, distress tolerance skills. It's sort of a thing that's talked about a lot, but I think it bears repeating constantly because it's so easy for us to kind of know what we should be doing, but then knowing when to actually do it. So that's sort of the takeaway that is kind of the theme of this whole thing. So myself and some of my interns put together this presentation that was really just a brief overview that was meant to, again, dovetail with the website that the seniors put together. And hold on, I don't know why it's, so we kind of went through just what is the stress tolerance, right? What are the skills? And it's really just, again, that idea of you're not really solving the problem. So your English paper is still going to be there, right? It's not going away, but what can you do in the moment to help you kind of manage that stress around it or that distress around it and get yourself to a place where you can tackle it successfully. So we kind of went through that. And then we did some polling, informal polling in the classroom, asking what students do to kind of help them. A lot of kids talked about walking their dog, for instance, for a few minutes, or watching a silly video on YouTube for a few minutes. That kind of idea of just distracting and kind of getting yourself to the point where you can re-engage effectively on your work or whatever you have on your plate at that moment. We went through some of the core DBT skills. So that just relaxation is one of them. That's obviously, we're talking a lot about that. And I love that the website that the students put together have those resources on mindfulness and meditation and ideas to just be able to relax a little bit and get yourself to a place that's a little bit more grounded. We also talked about the idea of, trying to focus doing on one thing at a time. And again, that was also on that website with the idea of really reflecting on, okay, how long can I really sit and focus on something? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 45 minutes? Sort of being like true to yourself and what you know about how long you can sustain, and then building in specific things that you're going to do during that time, and then rewarding yourself with something like taking a 5-minute break to do something you enjoy, to just sort of reinforce that momentum. You want to be able to accumulate positives, as we say in the biz, so to speak. Like you just want to start building those positive achievements, even if they're small and incremental. It gets ultimately to your goal. The other thing I really like, and this is something I use in my personal life, is to go back. Is to visualize either a positive memory or a positive picture. So in my previous school, I had an activity with students where they would go through their phones, and I would ask them to put together a small photo album of either a really fun night you had with friends or a really great vacation, something that will remind you of some positive feelings that you've had and positive memories that you can go to right in the moment there. And that seems to resonate. The other thing we had the students do in the classes is this idea of just self-talk, positive self-talk. And it sounds cheesy. Actually, I'll be totally honest, as someone who teaches this all the time, frankly, sometimes it feels a little cheesy, but sometimes cheesy things work. Like I feel like sometimes just like the most obvious things work when they're on paper. Their kids are like, well, of course, that makes sense. But it's actually, again, that idea of like doing it, or when are you going to do it to make it effective? So positive self-talk, we had some fun responses from that. And then at the end, we had them kind of think of a scenario that was coming up, whether it be a test or an assignment, or maybe a tough conversation with a teacher. Let's think about it ahead of time. What are you going to do in that moment? And again, to use a little bit of jargon, this idea of coping ahead, which is all about thinking about the situation head on, confronting it head on before it happens, and thinking about, okay, I might feel anxious about this, or I don't know how to say that exactly, and just going through it a little bit in your mind, and then pulling in some of those skills that we just reviewed to make that go a little bit more smoothly. So I really enjoyed that. The students seem to really pick up on it. And again, I think it's some things that we talk about a lot, and I don't think we can talk about it enough at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. All right,
Thanks,
and
everybody.
then lastly, I'm just going to share my screen. Go. You can
Just to add, if anyone, you're also welcome, parents, to reach out to Tom if your child's struggling and you'd like to run through some ideas, if any of this is hitting home and you want his thoughts on it, feel free to email or call. So, just to definitely reach out if you need anything from any of us, but Tom also in particular. And I think it's important to note, as I'm sure everyone notices, everyone is more aware of mental health these days, which is fantastic. And more than ever, our students are advocating for themselves and more generally advocating for a healthier environment. And that's wonderful to see, because I think it makes all students feel more comfortable reaching out for help when they need it.
Yeah, well said. Okay, and just somewhat lastly here, you guys can see this, right? Yep. Okay, as was mentioned before, at some point in the previous meeting or along the way, somebody had a good idea to talk about sort of programs and services that different grade levels can expect and you as parents can expect for the remainder of the year. So we put together a quick slide about that. We're going to talk about course selection, and then please stick around to the end because there's a quick 3-question survey that we would like you to fill out to help us plan future meetings. So with that, Ms. H.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deanna Hassan J. Kai, one of the high school counselors. I'm just going to walk you guys briefly through for each grade level what to expect. So seniors, they're finalizing college applications. In the spring, they're going to decide which college they're going to attend. So we're happy to help in any way we can with that. During senior week, students will experience a transition to college panel. Last year it was fantastic. The students had a lot of good advice, insights, things like that for the seniors in preparation for attending college next year. And of course, the senior shadowing, giving them the opportunity to explore different career opportunities and ideas, thinking about the future. The juniors, as the sophomores and freshmen will all do, is a course selection planning meeting. The difference with the juniors is that we also discuss college more intentionally, I guess, during that time. So we just had our presentation on Monday, actually, where students got the chance to hear about the different options for senior year. And parents should have been mailed home a day and time where we're going to Zoom and have that conversation. Later on in the spring, the juniors will also be having a one-on-one meeting with their counselor just to check in, see, any updates about their college process. What have they worked on since they met with us in January or February? We will be resuming the junior college workshops, I believe third quarter at some point. So stay tuned for that. They're already in Infinite Campus in the student schedule from the previous semester, I believe. So we will continue talking more specifically about letters of recommendation, fine-tuning college lists, things like that. And then in English class in the spring, the students will begin brainstorming their college essay and perhaps writing a rough draft of that. So it's a great way to get a jump start on college. Sophomores, as we explained earlier, we just wrapped up our study skills / DBT sessions for the sophomores in the English classes. Later on in the year, we will be doing a career exploration. Last year we did, the students filled out a career survey, they kind of interpreted that. And then we had an activity that I'm imagining we will do again this year where students interviewed a parent or guardian about their career trajectory. And as many students found out, it's not just a linear path. There's different ways to get to your dream career. Or maybe your career is something that you never thought you would have ended up doing. And then we will be having a sophomore parent night again, kind of recapping those sessions and things like that. And then sophomore and freshman course selection, basically we'll cover, planning for next year, because believe it or not, we're already halfway through this year. So it'll just be a chance for students and parents to have an individual meeting with the counselor to discuss the course options for next year and what would be a good fit, which Mr. Kind will talk about later on in this presentation. And then finally, Eliza did such a great job recapping what freshman transition has done so far this year. We really focused on academic transition and social transition, clubs, things like that in the spring. So in February, we're planning to have, we're partnering with the One Love Club, an organization. We are going to have a training for the seniors to talk about healthy relationships with the freshmen. And then in the spring, we'll have some kind of fun activity or celebration, hoping to get some of the seniors involved in planning that, brainstorming ideas, things like that. And with that, I'm gonna move, I believe Ms. Zelikoff will be speaking next.
Thanks, Ms. H. Hi, everyone. I am Melissa Zelikoff. I am one of the counselors at the high school. And so we've already embarked on some course selection, which is exciting. And our course selection process is super comprehensive in the sense that we provide resources to students on a school-wide level, on a grade level, and then finally at an individual level, which Ms. H just touched upon. So thinking about our greater school community, each student has access to an updated course catalog in which they're able to get a really solid overview of what courses are being offered at the high school. And this year is especially exciting because the course catalog has been adapted into a website featuring teacher videos on each course. So you can see here, it's an example of one of these videos for AP Literature presented on by Mr. D. And it's awesome because the teachers who have historically taught these courses can really speak to the nuances of what's being covered. And the course catalog has already been sent out to students and families and can be reviewed before our grade level meetings. Next slide, please. So each grade level meets with counselors and curriculum leaders to review the courses available to students in a particular grade for the following year. We already had our junior rising senior meeting. And at the meeting, course expectations for advanced courses such as APs and just courses in general are discussed, and students hear about elective options. So it's a really great opportunity for students to ask questions and to hear a bit more about what's being offered to them. And then after this meeting, each student gets the opportunity to log into their Infinite Campus account and they enter their own course selections. And then simultaneously, teachers enter their own course recommendations for each student based on their performance in their class up to that point. Keeping in mind that, of course, performance is fluid. This lastly leads to a one-to-one family meeting with the counselor, the student, and the family. And in this meeting, we have the awesome opportunity to check in with students and really hear about how the current year is going. And then we work with the family and the student to craft a well-balanced schedule for the following school year. And Aaron will speak about sort of how that balance plays a role.
Thank you. Sorry, I was talking to Anne. So, you know, a lot of this is really like 30,000 feet type of review. And I think here it gets a little bit closer to kind of shoes on the ground. When you sit down with your child and their counselor to talk about what courses to take, I think Anne and I were sort of ping-ponging the idea of like some type of like decision-making tree. And here are sort of like the big things to think about. The rigor of the course or courses, right? For a lot of students, any one advanced placement course, or for that matter, any one higher level math course might be possible to do, is likely possible to do, but it's in conjunction with your other 5 classes, in conjunction with your piano practice and your flute practice and your lacrosse practice and your soccer practice. So it's just like thinking about your life as a whole is what you want to consider as you go to choose which classes you're going to take and which will ultimately make up the overall rigor of your classes. Obviously, you want to take into account your performance in the current course that you're in. If you're not doing well in World History 1, I don't think AP World History would be a good fit. And, you know, the same could be said, it just fill in the blank of the class. Obviously, as we heard from the seniors, to tee off the event here, a student's study skills and their habits is a big, you know, factor in this. If your child is the type of child that likes to leave things to the last minute, I get that. At some point in high school, that's not going to work, is my experience in working with our students and just students as a whole. And so you want to make sure, again, and we're going to talk a little bit more about balance in the next slide, that your overall course choices, take into account your individual child's study skills and habits. As we mentioned, overall course load, so I'll skip that. And obviously, again, commitments outside of school. Sorry, I had to move my little tile. To help you and the students think about some of these things, and you'll get these slides tonight or tomorrow. Down at the bottom, there's 2 links to a time management worksheet and a homework by class worksheet. We've asked students to fill these out over the past few years. I think it's a really valuable tool. So you would basically take your anticipated overall courses in addition to like your busiest week or month in your life. Like if you're on the soccer team, maybe that's in September. If you're a lacrosse player, maybe that's in April. If you're part of the school play, maybe that's in December or November, whenever that happens. And just take those hours of the week and work it into a time management worksheet to see if you do in fact have enough time in your day, in your week, to do everything that it is that you want to do. Because, time is finite, obviously. And so we don't want students to overextend themselves. And then lastly, Anne, I can't see you, but if you want to chime in, just feel free to do so at any point. For students, and this is maybe more so for 9th graders, but definitely applies for 10th graders. Obviously 11th graders only have a year left to choose of courses to choose from. But for the younger students, you do want to think about what priority you want to give certain courses or certain academic departments. At some point over the course of high school, it could come down to having to choose between one or the other courses. We are a small school. There's a smaller amount of certain courses being offered, certain sections. And so not everybody can take everything they want. So we do ask students to kind of prioritize what it is they definitely want to take, whether that's next year or at some point in the future. For example, if you do want to take AP art in the future, you do need to take, the sequential art sequence. If you want to be in an AP language course, you do need to be in a sequential world language course. And so these are just kind of more nuanced things to consider, and it might change. It will change per student, but something to keep in mind as you go to sort of review the course website and make choices with your child. And then again, lastly, a word about balance. This is probably where the video from the curriculum leaders will come into play, and also the meeting with your child's counselor. Depending upon what courses you're choosing, you want to try to balance out these like sort of heavy reading and writing courses with heavy or potentially not as heavy math, science problem set courses, right? As an example, AP Environmental Science, albeit as a science course, has a lot of reading and writing to it and might not be best to be taken with Advanced Placement US History as a junior. And so you just want to keep these things in mind, because again, at the end of the day, as we've seen for those of you that have been in the high school for a little while, like our students are definitely overworked and overscheduled. And wherever we can, we want to try to bring down some of that overload. And so this is a good place to definitely intentionally make choices that'll allow your student to spend time with their friends, to get to bed at a reasonable time, to wake up excited to go to school, just have balance in their life so that they're not overwhelmed by the prospect of just getting up on any given day. And I'll stop in case you want to add something, because this is the last slide.
Well, what we're going to do, Erin's going to put forward a survey that you can fill out so that you can let us know. Just put up your phone to the QR code what you would like to hear more about. We had some thoughts that maybe, at the end of the next high school council meeting, we could break off into a 9th grade group, a 10th grade group, and get into more specifics for those grade levels. So we just want to get some of your feedback. I think course selection is very important because it probably has the most impact on a student's experience in a particular year, is what courses they're in, how well prepared they are for those, and the balance of the load. When students feel incredibly stressed, we look at their schedule, and I will often say, that's no surprise, look what they're taking. So listen, I get the pressure that students feel to take certain classes, like sophomores feel they have to take AP World and AP Chem. Don't ask me why. I was a biochem major. AP Chem was the hardest class I took in high school as a college biochem major. We have all these sophomores who decide to take it with another AP. That's very difficult. I never took AP World. I know things have changed, but please, 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 when we ask students, what are you doing for fun? When do you see your friends? When do you go to the movies? It's really sad when some of them tell us they do not have time. So please sit down with your child, have a heart-to-heart. It is not the end of the world if they don't take every AP Science before they leave high school. It is not the end of the world if they don't take AP Computer Science A. These are things they could take in college, or maybe they won't take. We really want them to have a good high school experience and also enjoy themselves. So guidance counselors are going to have those individual meetings with you and your child. We're going to keep saying this. I hope some of you listen to it. I know some of you might not, but please, ask us how to better balance your child's schedule. I meet with families and give them ideas. You don't have to take all the AP Sciences to be an interesting student to a college. Take Bronx River Research for 3 years and do an interesting research project. Everyone else has AP Bio, AP Chem, and AP Environmental. You're going to be the unique student applying to that college. Take an independent study. Take, the service learning course and then do a service learning project. So there are a lot of ways, and your child's counselor will provide those ideas to you. A lot of ways to make a meaningful experience for your child that does not overload them during high school. And I implore you to try to explore those, because the kids that we see that are really overwhelmed and not having a good time, we can often trace it back to their schedule almost directly. So that is my advice, and we'll try to get 9th and 10th grade parents. So maybe some more specifics, but that's just a general overview. And your counselor will reach out to you about the student meeting. I see that in the chat. The scheduling meeting right now is juniors are being scheduled. February into March will be sophomores. Mid-March into April will be freshmen, and then 8th graders. So if you are the parent of a 9th grader, you're not going to hear much until late February. That's the schedule. We go by grade level from the juniors down.
And just to add, I'm trying to keep up with the chat too, and I'm getting like direct questions that I'm trying to answer. There's no priority given in the schedule to anybody that comes first or anybody that's scheduled last. And so if you get an appointment, if you get an appointment and you can't make it, it's okay if you have to reschedule. There's no rush to meet with your child's counselor to make sure he or she or they get into, class X, Y, or Z.
Can I comment on that? The schedule is built after everyone signs up. Everyone goes through the sign up process, and the schedule is built based on requests every year. So we look at what kids requested and we build the schedule from that. So it shifts year to year. And something that's very important is that it is much more likely your child will get the courses they want if you request them now than it is if your child changes their mind in the end of August when they decide they might not want to do a couple of the summer assignments. Their schedule may get really messed up. If you put the requests in accurately, we do our very, very best to try to get kids most, if not everything they want. I will say there is priority put on seniors. Getting seniors their choices because it's their last year to take courses, and then juniors, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, but again, that's after all the schedules have been input into the system. I had another thought, but it's just escaped me. I think I'm going to stop sharing because I think we got had enough of that QR code. I was just going to say, for obvious reasons, parents unfortunately are not allowed in the building for the scheduling meeting. So you will get a link from your child's counselor to, get on a Zoom. At the same time, the students are welcome in our office. They're also welcome to, be home during a free period and have that call with you from the house or from anywhere else in the school that they feel comfortable taking the call from.
And as soon as we can, we will let parents come back in. It's just
course.
not right at the moment. Hopefully this was helpful, and in that survey you can provide us feedback about where you might want more information, and in those follow-up meetings we'll work with Amy to arrange them. We can do breakout rooms, so we can do a 10th grade room, a 9th grade room, so that parents can get the specific info they want. This was more of an overview for everyone. And as you saw at the beginning of this, other students may be the very best information your child has. They put together that website. It was unbelievable. So asking a student who's in a course right now, whether, what it's like, is probably going to give you the best information of anyone. So if your child, and counselors can point your child to someone. If your child doesn't know someone in that class, counselors can say, you know what, I'm going to set you up to meet with so-and-so to talk about AP World, AP US, AP Bio. I'm naming all APs because those are the courses you should have your child talk to someone else about. I don't think, oh, Emily, I don't think, I don't know if that's good, if anyone else has questions. Oh, Aaron, you sent the survey link. Perfect.
Yeah, just had to grab it.
I think that's it for us. Of course, email us if you think of a question at any time.
Thanks very much.
I think that's it. Emily, anything else we need to go
No, I was
over?
wondering if you were waiting for me to close out the meeting.
No,
but,
that's okay.
Thank you to all the administration for presenting, and thanks everybody else for signing on. It was a great meeting and it was super helpful. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.